Game Set Match Up, the podcast where we talk everything partnerships, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Welcome to Game Set Match Up, the podcast where we discuss all things partnerships. I'm your host, Greg Watts, and please welcome our guest today, serial entrepreneur, business owner, and investor, Rebecca Sutherland. Bex, hello and welcome.
Thank you very much for having me, Greg.
Well, thank you very much for joining us. And once again, you're on a very glamorous location compared to my slightly grey Maida Vale. But maybe you could share with our listeners where you are, because I'm utterly jealous.
Yes, so I live in the Algarve in Portugal.
Of course you do. Of course you do. Right. from a cool 3 degrees to a balmy, I guess, late teens, early 20s.
Yeah, it's 17 today. There's a little chill.
Stop showing off. Right. Right. Starting with an overview and introduction to our guest, maybe you could tell our listeners a little bit more about who you are, your background, and what led you into a career founding businesses and creating partnerships.
So I actually started very early on. I was 19, 20 when I decided to start my first business, and it was domestic cleaning. So I was strangely working at a library at the time, big reader. So I worked at the library and decided, no, I'm going to kind of go out on my own and do this. From there, I bought a hair salon, and it kind of spiraled from there. And I made plenty of mistakes in those in those early days. You make mistakes all the way through, really, but things that really brought me forward. And interestingly, when I think about partnerships and how they've, I guess, forged who I am and what I do now, my first acquisition was from a client I'd had that when I was cleaning. So she was one of my first clients when I was cleaning. And then I stayed in touch with her. I think it must have been about 10 years. She called me up. We'd kept in contact, and she called me up and she said, look, I've got this business and I'm in trouble and I need some help. And I went in to help her, and I eventually acquired the business and took it off her, and then sold it further down the line. She now actually was one of my first investors when we started investing in property.
Oh, wow.
So I think I don't think I realised at the time how important relationships and partnerships and collaborations were. But the more I go through business, that's literally all it's about. There's a great saying: it's not what you know, it's who. And I think it's really powerful because it especially when you first start out, I think you can do everything by yourself, and you're stubborn. You want to do it all by yourself. But I think if you can realise early on that actually this is it's like when you have children and you need a village. You do need a village. You need the support network, and that comes from relationships, collaborating, and partnerships. And I don't think I could stress the people part of business enough, because those people that supported me when I was cleaning, I still speak to the majority of them, to be honest, have supported me throughout my entire life. They've put me in touch with someone, or, how can I help you do this? It's been, to look back on it actually has been really impactful, because I just feel like without them, I wouldn't have got to where I am now. And I wouldn't have thought at 19 that was possible, because I was very clear that it was just me and I was going to do it by myself and I didn't need anyone else. But you do. And it's okay to say that.
I think that's incredibly powerful, because when you start out, you start out from a blank canvas, as it were. There's no precedent. You haven't got any experience. There's nothing to say, oh, this is the business I previously set up and sold. It's, you're starting afresh. So people will be taking a complete gamble on you. And I think those people who, I say gamble, obviously that might be a bit of a strong word, but you're unknown, you're untested, effectively. And I think the people that do take a punt on you, support you, give you the time, are absolute gems, because I think it's very easy to gravitate towards very, very successful people, multiple serial entrepreneurs who have exited multiple times, but the ones who are just starting out, who gives them the time?
And they're the people that they're up and coming, they're bringing new ideas, they're changing, and they've come from a different generation. So the way they look at things is very, very different. And I work with some younger people now, and some of the things they say, I go back to other businesses and go, do you know, like, they're doing this, or we're doing it, because they're brought up in a completely different way. They're learning different things than I did at school, and So I think it's really important. One of the exercises I do with a lot of founders when I meet them is I ask them to write down everything they've done in a week.
Mm-hmm.
And then I ask them to highlight or circle what are you really passionate about? What did you really enjoy, and what are you really good at? And they, circle those things. And I say, great, that's what you should be doing. Because your job is to be passionate. Your job is to enjoy what you do, so that you can attract the right people into your circle. You need those people. Anything else, we've just created some recruitment gaps, and you shouldn't be doing them.
Well, that's so refreshing, because I remember when we were doing our businesses now, in my earlier corporate career, I remember we'd have development kind of sessions, and managers would say, oh, well, you're great at this, 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 and this, but actually your areas of development are this, this, and this. And you'd look at it and you think, but I'm not really interested in that, and that. And then when you come to, I think, running your own business, you think, as you just said, the best businesses are the ones where the people running them and the people part of them are doing the stuff which they love.
Yeah, because otherwise, you get bogged down in this day to day. And I say to people, when you recruit a bookkeeper, do you also ask them to do marketing?
No.
Oh, well, no. Okay, so can I ask why you're doing those things? And it's really difficult when you start out. It's difficult when you require investment, especially if you're bootstrapping. It's really hard. But you've got to create a plan, and that is, okay, this is what I'm good at and this is what I should stick to. I know I have to do these bits at the beginning, but at what point am I going to move away from those? Because I think when you have the end goal to go, okay, when we reach this much, I'm going to be able to hire an admin person, a bookkeeper, a marketer, whatever it is. That gap now doesn't seem so bad. It's got an end date. It's coming, you can work towards it. And I'm very much, I like to work towards the deadlines. If I know that's coming, fabulous. I'm going to work my socks off until that point, and then I can hand it on to somebody else. And I think if we had more people that could recognise that that's going to happen, but they have to have a plan in place in order for that to come to fruition. And that actually the stuff that you get bogged down with, you shouldn't be doing. You shouldn't be doing everything, because you can't possibly be good at everything. And you will actually start to lose the passion and the want for the business. And I think that's a real shame when people start to lose the spark. No one's going to believe in you if you're not able to believe in yourself a little bit. It's hard. It's hard to pitch yourself.
I think actually, I guess linked to that as well, you hear lots of stories of particularly younger nowadays startup founders who talk and almost celebrate the fact they work 24/7 and they work until burnout. They order the pizzas in at midnight, and we think, I'm not so sure I necessarily agree with that, because actually you get burned out, and I don't know what the stats are around burnout with startup founders, but actually having people that do stuff that they're really good at and just focusing on those things, rather than, as you say, rather than trying to do everything and burning out, is surely not going to be healthy for you or the business.
I don't think so. And I think I used to be one of those people like, oh, I've worked 18 hours today, like, look at me. And I was exhausted. And you cannot possibly be effective when you are working like that. It's just not possible. So yes, you have to grind. Yes, you have to work hard, but you actually have to work really efficiently and really smartly. So you have to have these plans in, you have to put the goals in place. You have to know what you're doing this for. So on the days where I do have to do marketing and bookkeeping and a bit of admin and the thing I actually enjoy, that's not forever.
Yeah.
And that in 6 months' time, actually, I'm doing this to get us to a position of here when I can get the right people in to do the right job. And I think if somebody had explained that to me when I was younger in a way that I could really understand, it would have saved me, a good 10 years of making those mistakes.
You say that, but we'll come back to that in a minute. But this links nicely onto our next question, actually, because I really want to ask, because I know that our listeners will be keen to hear, how have you seen approaches change when it comes to creating partnerships, and what does a Gold Star partnership look like for you now?
For me, it's values based. So I am values are everything. You look after your values, you set them, you ingrain them in everybody. You live, you breathe them. The value financial will come. It will. It's a trust the process thing. For me, yes, our partnerships are based on, are our values aligned? Is there mutual respect? Is there trust? I'm a big fan of the go give a book. That's who I am. I like to give my time. I like to help people. I'm not asking for anything in return. And I think if you have a partnership with two people who are the same as that, I'm not expecting anything, but I will help you whatever you kind of need, or I'll put you in touch with the right people. That for me is the Gold Star, because I really love when people phone me and they say, Beck, do you know someone that can help with this? Or can you help me with this? And I say, I can't, but this person can. Just let me know how you get on. Especially when you're starting out, it's hard to get the people to help you. There's plenty of people who will give you advice.
Yeah.
Plenty of people that will give you advice.
Yes.
But my question to people when they come to me and they say, my mum thinks this, and my cousin thinks this, and my friends think this, and I say that, and that's absolutely fine. They're entitled to their opinion, and you should respect that,
Of course.
but their opinion is coming from the position that they are
Yeah.
in their mindset. Do you want to swap your life with that person? No. Do you want to swap your life with Richard Branson? Yes. Richard Branson takes risks.
Yeah.
Richard Branson does it this way. So respect what they're saying. Thank you very much for your advice. But actually, I'm going to do it this way because everybody's going to tell you what you should do. You need to find the right people to find advice from, to take it from, because everybody likes to think that their advice is worthwhile. They do. And
Yeah.
I had plenty of people when I first started that was, just get a normal job and
You could
why
do it
don't you
this
just
way.
do what everyone else does? And
Yep.
I am an awful employee, so actually no one would employ me anyway. So but that's not what I want to do. I don't know what I want to do, but I know that I don't want to do that. And that's very difficult for some people to understand. And it's absolutely fine if they don't want to do it that way because you don't want to do it their way. But as long as there's that respect there. So I always say it's like when you have a baby, people give you loads of advice.
Mhm.
And you, in the end, just smile and nod because your child is not like anybody else's child, and you just have to do what works for you and the baby.
I think that's.
And I think that's really just be, very respectful. Thank you very much for your
Mm.
advice. I'm going to go down a different route because
think
I think this suits me better.
I think that's so I've got to be careful what I say, but I think it's when you yeah when you're starting out with businesses and you have ideas and I also sometimes find that you might be having a coffee, having a drink at the gym, wherever you might be, and someone might say, again, as you say, with the best of intentions, and
Yes.
maybe you could do it this way, or actually what about this? And as you say, it comes with the best of intentions. It really, 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 really does, because as human beings, I think we all really want to help other people.
Yeah.
But the advice, I think that comes from 95% of the times, it comes from people that haven't necessarily done what you're doing and set up businesses and taken the risk and, and all of the things that are attached with that. And you want to sometimes, at least I do, say, well, tell me your experiences of having been in this position. And obviously,
Can you evidence how that's happened for you
yeah,
previously? I'm very evidence based. So for me, that's brilliant. And I'm not saying that people don't have some good ideas. And a
no,
lot of people are coming from an emotional place. Your family are coming, they don't want to see
they
you
want you
burn
to do
out.
well.
Yeah, they want you to do well, but they don't understand you.
They
And
can't get
I found that very difficult because people would just it was like I was just weird,
yeah,
not normal. Why don't you just do it this way? And I was just thinking, I don't know anybody that's the
I can't.
same as me. And it's really hard. And I think a lot of that then of me pushing against asking for help comes from that, because who am I asking for help? How do
Yeah.
I find these people? Where are my people that can help advise me, that have been there, that have done it, that can evidence that works or that doesn't work, or try this and see, that have a more open mind in that respect than other people who haven't been there and done it.
I think that I was going to say that maybe one of your next businesses might be maybe like a some form of network, but maybe we can come back to that.
Yeah.
Well, this actually quite links nicely to the next question. So, for all the budding entrepreneurs and partnerships people listening, and this kind of goes back to what you were saying a little bit earlier, what advice would you give to your younger self starting out? Perhaps the do's and the don'ts of entrepreneurship and partnership creation and development.
The first one is, don't think you can do this alone.
No.
You can't. That's okay. You need to ask for help. I would highly recommend reading the books Traction and Rocket Fuel. And the reason I say that is when I read Traction, I took a sigh of relief because I realised, oh, actually, being like me is normal for
Yeah.
an awful lot of people. I am the big ideas person. I am disruptive when I go into my offices because I hear a conversation and want to know what happened and how can we improve that, or there's something on the wall and well, what is that and why do we do it that way? And I read and find your people. So the people, I just can't stress enough how important the people are. But know who you are, pin your values down. They might change, slightly over time, but know who you are. Put yourself out there to meet people. Understand that people will give you advice whether you ask for it or not.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you just need to be very clear on what advice you want to take and from who. Because I've been in positions where I've done things in business because somebody told me to do it. And I did it because I wasn't sure what to do. It wasn't the right thing to do. And I'm a very gut feeling person. It didn't feel right in my gut, but I did it anyway. And it didn't work. And then you're stuck.
It's good that you did it because you then knew that you validated your gut feel. You wouldn't do
And
it
that,
again.
yeah, because later on, now I am very much a gut feeling person. I can meet someone and within 3 minutes will be, okay, I know who I can introduce them to. I know whether their business is, if they can get it right, that it's going to work, because I can really kind of tell that. And I always say that in interviews. I mean, I don't interview necessarily so much anymore for the brands, but I will sit in on interviews if I need to. I'm one of the ops managers in one of my businesses. We used to do a thing where if people came in for an interview, they'd sit downstairs and I would ask people to walk past, pop to the toilet, go to the kitchen, just see how they interact, see what you think. And this guy came in and some of the people came upstairs and they said, yeah, it's nice, he said hello and whatever. And I went downstairs and looked at him and he said, oh, hi, we did the introduction. And I thought, you are going to work here. I'm going to work with you for a really long time. And he's now it moved on from that business and he's in one of my other businesses. And I hope I work with him forever. But I knew there was something there. And I think that comes from meeting lots of people, seeing what your intuition is, evidencing, okay, well, I thought that person wasn't quite great and actually they weren't, or okay, I misstepped with that one. I didn't think they'd be great, but actually they've been amazing. It helps you really understand how your intuition works. And then that helps you when you have business ideas. Am I right on this? Those things really help. So I think actually building relationships with people, I mean, it's important for so many reasons, but actually the intuition building and the gut feeling thing, I find with people works really, really well. And it does help you, push forward.
I think so. And actually, after this, I'll try and find some. I recently read some science-based and evidence-based stuff around gut feel and actually quantifying, the science behind it. And
Yeah.
I'll dig it out and I'll send it to you because it is a thing. And how many times do we look back and say, actually, I wasn't that sure about that person, and actually I was right, or this person I really was sure about, and look how fantastic they've become.
Yeah.
But it is a thing. I mean, this links on again very nicely. You could have written these questions. This links on to our next question. Having created so many businesses since the age of 19 and partnerships, what are your top tips when it comes to creating high performing teams and winning cultures? And you have touched on this, but maybe you could elaborate a little bit more.
Values.
Mm.
Values is it, like I say, it's the most important thing, because once you know who you are and what the business values are, you are hiring people based on values. So you've got technical people that have to have specific qualifications or have done specific training. That's all fine. But for other people, I like to sit in an interview and know, okay, this is how they're evidencing that value. All our questions are always values based. They're able to evidence those things. Okay, brilliant. And maybe they're not particularly strong there. Is it that they can't do it, don't know how to do it, don't want to do it? Are there bits that we can tweak? I think very often when you're hiring, there's the employer has decided what they want.
Yeah.
And if you can't tick every single box and do these 100%, flawlessly, you're not right for the job. I completely disagree with that. Do I think this person is going to add value to my business? Yes or no? Is this person going to add value to my team? Are they going to fit in well? Are they going to question the values? Are they, when somebody does something, are they going to challenge that and say, well, I don't think that was in line with who we are? That's who I want. I want those people that aren't going to let anything slide. And I think when you've got people like that, even if they're kind of quiet, unassuming people who you may not think are going, they will come and they will say, I'm just not, this person that's joined, I'm just not, I think it's a bit off. It's important. The other thing that I think makes a huge difference is when you offer your staff shares, employee ownership trusts or share options. I always find it amusing when founders or employers talk to me about, and people just don't work as hard as me. Well, why would they? Because when you sell the business and swan off to Barbados, they're just staying in their job. What are you expecting them to do? And I think for some people, we have this vision of how it's going to be, and we want everyone else to see that. But people also have their own visions. So for me, when you start to talk to teams about, look, if you own this business and we put in an exit strategy and this is the plan and this is what we're going to do, I like to ask people the question, actually, if I could give you any amount of money right now, how much would it be? I'm not going to have to caveat it with, I'm not going to, just to be clear. But if I were to, how much would it be? And you get some people who say, I want 5 million. And you get some people who say, I want 25,000. Okay, well, so now I understand where their mindset is at, because they want to pay their mortgage off. Do you want to go on holiday? Oh, well, I'll go on holiday with the money I've saved for my mortgage. Okay. But if we sell this business in 5 years' time and you own X percentage and that becomes worth, what are you going to do with the rest of your money? They go, oh, well, maybe I would. Yeah, maybe we'd go on a really nice, maybe we would move house. And you've started their cogs turning in terms of bigger picture. Oh, actually, this could change my life. I cannot emphasize the difference that makes to teams, because everybody's now working together. If they're not happy with something, they're going to tell you 100%. They're not going to let it slide. They get up in the morning, they come to work because they want to make this work. They might not always like each other. You work with people that you don't like, but you respect the fact that they are good at their job and they're going to help get you to where you want to be in your life. And it's interesting because when you talk to people, those people now that ask me for 25 grand, for example, I ask them to do vision boards. I think it's really important. Actually, I wouldn't mind a Range Rover. Okay, brilliant. I get them to build them online or find a house that you'd like. That mindset shift is huge, because if you have a team of 10 people that are working to an earnout at the end, they will give you everything they've got because it's working for themselves. And I had a conversation with somebody the other day and he said, well, but why should they? I said, but why shouldn't they? This is their life. I want my teams to work. I mean, if I could get them to work 3 days a week, that would be excellent. But they do a 4-day week. I'm all about balance, and we trial it and we make sure it works for everyone. But and in some of the industries, I mean, that won't work. It does work. And I tell you why it works. It works because my team set expectations. They set their boundaries. They're very clear on when they're working, when they're not working. They tailor their days to ensure that clients aren't left. We've got things in the background that work to help on a Friday. They're happy. Their partners are happy. Their kids are happy. I want my teams to go home and be happy, and I want their partners to be happy because they're happy, and their kids to be happy because they're happy. And I think if I think about what is our, as employers, we have a duty and a responsibility to society. And I think, imagine if every employee went home happy. Would that not make society better? Do we not want that to happen? Would everyone not be slightly calmer? Would there not be less mental health issues? Would there not be so much strain on the NHS? All of those things come from, a lot of people's stress comes from work. And it's not just the financial aspect. It's not that they're paid, they're not paid what they should be paid. It comes from, are they respected? Are they listened to? Do they have autonomy? All of those things are hugely important. And I think for people to think, people go to work, they get paid, they just go home and that's it. That's not it. Because any frustration they take from that day, they take home. And I want people to go home and be happy and have a peaceful, happy life. And if we can impart that, and it's values based, if we can impart that in our teams, that for me is what makes me happy.
Got a controversial question for you. We're nearly at the end. If we had more women in leadership roles, would that be the case?
I can only base it on my experience. So this is not to generalize at all. But when I talk to female leaders, they talk about people.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
When I talk to male leaders, they talk about numbers.
And themselves.
And that's, yeah, yes, well,
Sorry.
yes, and
I should
themselves.
say that.
For the majority, I know, don't get me wrong, there are some male leaders I'm thinking of now.
Yeah.
They're amazing, they're
Many,
incredible,
many.
but they are not the norm.
No, they're not.
They are the disruptors in that element, because they care about their staff. You know, they want them to do well. I'm trying to think of any female, I don't have any examples, but female leaders will talk about, I want to build the right team and I want to do this. And don't get me wrong, of course the numbers are important. We're in business for a reason. But look after your people, get your values in place, and that financial value will come. Because your clients, your suppliers, anybody that deals with your company, any person in that company will get that from them. And that just in turn just builds and builds and builds. And the relationships, the partnerships, they all come from people. That's it.
Well, that links us very nicely to the last question. And I could talk to you for a great deal longer. And maybe there's a follow-up podcast to be had on this. But to round us up, one last question, if I may. What do you see the future holding for businesses when it comes to creating partnerships with each other? And what, if anything, will you and your businesses be doing differently?
I think for us, it's we ask for constant feedback. Constant feedback. So how is it working for our client, our suppliers, you know, all of those things. With the introduction of AI, we know we've got to move with the times. We get that. My CTO is, you know, all about AI, and that's fine. But I think human connection is powerful. And I think that for a very long while yet, it will still be needed. So we've implemented things like, there's a great, I call it a chat not bot. It's a chat bot. A guy that I know, he owns the business, and it's a chat function on your website, 24/7, but it's a human.
Oh, brilliant! Yeah,
It's brilliant.
Brilliant.
And I think what we need to look at is taking the elements of technology that are really going to push the businesses forward, but how do we implement the human aspect? Because there's lots of people who say, oh, those jobs won't exist because of AI. And I'm not sure that's us moving forward, because we need human connection. It's required. It's, you know, our body needs it, our mind needs it. So do I want to talk to a chatbot all day? No, I don't. I want to talk to humans. Do I want them to be doing all my admin? And no, I don't. How do we create the balance? I think it's all about balance, because we have to move forward. We know times are changing. We have to be open to that. And I think businesses that aren't open will struggle. And when they want to exit their business, they won't be able to, because they're not future proofing. But for me, the human side has to remain. Because I don't think a bot, maybe they'll get there, a bot doesn't have passion.
No.
You know, a bot is not going to get the team, you know, pumped up and ready to go. They haven't got high energy. They're just flat. And I don't want businesses to be flat. I want them to be high energy, and, you know, how do we do this, and what are we doing, and what's next, and how do we improve, and how do we move forward? And I don't know that a bot is going to be able to do that. So I feel like we're safe for a while.
I think we are. It'll be interesting. Maybe you can come back in a year or so. We can actually reflect, and we can look at, because it's all coming quite quickly. We could see actually, you know, in just a year, it might be nice to reflect on that.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're coming to an end, but could talk to you for such a great deal longer. You've been such a wonderful guest, and thank you so much, Bec Sutherland, for sharing your advice, tips, story when it comes to creating businesses and partnerships. We'd love you to come back in the future, but just wanted to say thank you so much for joining us on Game Set Matchup.
Thank you very much for having me, Greg.
Thank you. Take care. Enjoy the weather.
I will.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining this week's Game Set Matchup. Tune in to hear more about the need to knows and the do's and don'ts when it comes to creating successful business partnerships.